for this video. So we're going to start totally with the new material. This will be your first what we call geometry lesson, because the other two things we did was pre-algebra review to kind of get us ready for what we use in geometry. Now, where we start with geometry is just the very, very basics. Geometry is going to be a lot of shapes and dealing with shapes. So, example, circles. There's a whole unit we'll go through with circles. Triangles. We spend a lot of time on triangles. So, this is something that we start at the most basic parts of the shapes and build our way to what we use as our shapes. The first thing that we start with, and you're going to want to set these off in notes to where you are keeping these together, these shapes here. So the first one we look at is a point. Okay, just a point out in space, and it just looks just like a point. And what's the thing about a point is, on this board it's a certain size, but on your paper it's a certain size. A point does not necessarily have to be an exact size. Okay, the sun out in the universe, in the solar system, it is a point. Okay, the Earth is a point. It's just that point in space doesn't have a defined size, but on this board, here's this point. And when we get into geometry and naming these shapes, we have to be very specific with our names. Because if I've got a point there and a point here and a point here, and I say, okay, now I want you to refer to one of those points, I have to be specific about which point that I'm talking about. And when we get into shapes, we have to be specific about maybe which side of the shape we're talking about. So we have to work with how to label and name these shapes and things that we do in the geometry class. So a point is going to be named with a capital letter. Okay, so like this could be point A, this could be point C, this could be point X. And you're going to find out too in geometry, it does not go in alphabetical order. Okay, because we could turn shapes, twist them, move them, and refer to them in any order. So these 3 points are out in space. So now if I was to say find point X on the board, then you know I'm talking about that point right there. Or point C, I'm talking about that. So when you label a point, you just use a capital letter. The reason why it's capital is because you know from math now that we use letters in math in an algebraic problem. And so when we're talking about a variable like 3x plus 7 plus 2x squared, those are lowercase. If you notice, we've always used lowercase. Like when I use g, 2g plus 3x, we use that lowercase x and that lowercase g. Okay, that's for variables. For a point out in space, for geometry, the reason we want to keep it separate from that is we use a capital letter. Okay, so point A to point B, we would be saying go from there to there. Okay, so we use capital letters. Okay, and that is a point. The next one is a line. Okay, we got a line. Now, anytime you have 2 points in space, you can connect those points with a straight line. Okay, you can connect them, and if you notice, even at home, my drawings and my straight lines are not very good, even when I'm at a smaller board. So those who have had me in the past know in geometry or different classes, they know that I'm not an art teacher. But basically, 2 points can be connected by a straight line, and so those points, no matter where they are, you can connect them with a straight line. And the thing about a line is, it continues on that straight trajectory forever. Okay, it can keep going forever out into space, and it keeps going this way forever out into space. Okay, so a line continues on. You see these arrows that I put. That's why the number line, when we learned about the number line, it is a line because you've got your numbers that you're dealing with, like 0, 1, 2, and it's a line that keeps going both ways, to infinity both ways. Okay, so that's what a line is. Now, since a line is 2 points, or even 3 or 4 or 5, as long as you have at least 2, you've formed a line. So I could put a third point here, or fourth point. We'll do that in a second. But let's say I'm talking about line AB. Okay, and so when I go to show like a point, I can just put point A, okay, or point B, or point X. A line, we're going to do this symbol, like let's call this line AB. And we're going to put a little line symbol above it. Okay, so that's how we name a line. It's AB with the little line symbol above it. Okay. Now, the thing about a line is, it doesn't matter what order I go in, I could refer to the same line. So I could have called this AB. I also could have called it BA. Okay. I could have flipped it and called it the other way. So it doesn't matter which order you go in because that's referring to the same line. I could put, like I said, I could put a third line up there, or third point up there, and let's say I put just even out here, let's say I put another point and call it L. Okay. Well, now I've got several ways I could call this line. I could call it AL. Okay, meaning that line. I could have called it BL. And see, that line continues on forever. So you don't even have to include A in it. You're talking about the line that's along here. So BL. I could have called it LA. Could have went the other way with it. Gone up this way. As long as you're using that line symbol and you're picking out two of the points, that's referring to every point on that line. Okay? So that's a line. The next one is a line segment, which is almost the same, but there is a big difference. So let me put a example up there. Let's put, I'm going to make this one, try to make this one straight here. And let's just put X, let's put Y. See, and it doesn't matter that it's going straight. I could have angled this one too as well. Remember geometry, we can turn it. So we got three letters, X, Y, C. And if I call this XC, so if I go XC and I go a line symbol, that's the line. Okay, or I could have called it XY, and that be the line. Okay, so those are the lines. But a line segment is talking about a specific amount of space. So if I say XY, and I mean to only go from here to here. So this comes in when you're like measuring things and you're doing a side of something. You may only want to know the length of that side. So like let's say I have a triangle that's made up of three line segments here, and I mean the distance from here to here, and I want to stop at each spot. Well, that's measuring this distance. That's a line segment. So XY, and I don't want to just leave it XY. I want to put a line segment symbol. And as you notice, the difference from a line to a line segment is I don't put the arrows. Okay, I just put a line segment and I don't put the arrows, meaning I just mean from here to here. I could have also referred to XC. Okay, put a line segment. That means the distance from here to here. Even though I go through Y, I want to talk about the distance from here to here. So I would put XC. And with line segments, it does not matter which order you go in. You could go either way. I could have called that same segment CX. Okay, and that's talking about from here to here. It's the same space, it's the same distance, so it doesn't matter which order you name those letters for a line segment. There is going to be one here in a second that it does matter what order you go in, but for a line or a line segment, it doesn't matter which order you go in. Okay? So let's look at that next one. That next one is a ray. Okay, a ray. And when you hear that word, probably one of the first things you think of is the ray from a sun, the sun ray. Like I said, the sun out in space is a point, and it sends out these rays of light, okay, that go on forever, but it originates here from the sun. So that's what a ray does. It starts at a point, and it goes forever in a direction, okay? So you got these rays coming out from the sun. You could have one going straight down or one over, and you've got them going out. Each one of those is a ray, okay? And a ray does not have to go in a certain, it could go this way. You could have a ray that goes this way. You could have a ray that goes straight down, okay? But the difference between it and a line is it starts somewhere. It starts and then goes. It doesn't go both directions forever. Difference between it and a segment is it goes on forever in one way, okay? So there's no like starting and stopping point, okay? So this is a ray, and with a ray, okay, you're gonna have they'll give you 2 points though, because you gotta know in which direction are you going. So they'll go maybe X, G or something, okay? And I'll put another ray up there. Let's put Y, V. I'll have it going in a different. And this one, let's go this way. Let's have MT. Okay, so I've got this going this way, that one going that way, and this one coming back towards me. Well, array is specific on how you have the order you have to go. These two were not. This one it is. You have to put your first letter is where it begins, like the sun. Okay, that's where you have to start your first letter. So this one, the only way I can call it is XG. Okay, I cannot go GX because I don't go forever in the direction of X. So I have to start like at the sun or at the point that you're starting at as XG. Then the symbol that I use is always going to go to the right, even if the ray doesn't. So I know that's going to be weird here in a second, but you put the starting point and the next letter, and then you always point the ray to the right. So in this one, it looks like this ray. It's XG. But this one, okay, I'm going to start with the starting point, Y, and I'm going to put YV, and then I put it to the right. I don't point it down just exactly like it's going. I just write it XV, or I'm sorry, YV, and I point to the right. Same thing with this one. It's going to be at the starting point, it's going to be MT. So you start with the starting point and go to T. And even though the ray is going to the left, you mark it to the right because you're identifying where it's starting and you're going in the direction of T. So it's MT. And you point that to the right. Okay? And so that's one of the main things about array. Okay? Then you have what we call a straight ray, and that's just, I just want to point that out because it's going to build us into our next one. A straight ray is a line. It's the same thing as a line, but you kind of look at it as two rays put together. Okay, so it's really no different than a line because that's what it is. It goes in both directions, has a starting point. Let's say we're going to use that as a starting point, and then go that way forever, and then that way forever from the. So it's like two rays put back to back that go in opposite directions. That's the same as a line. That's what a line is. But the reason why I want to call it straight rays, we're going to take these and start moving them and form what we call angles. But I just want to point out a straight ray. Another thing I want to point out about a straight ray is the degree measure is 180 degrees. And we're going to talk a lot about degrees, especially when we get into circles and angles, okay? Degree measures are measured, that's what we use a protractor for later on. It's, it's a measurement. If you've ever heard, I always use the example, if you ever heard the term, you need to do a 180, okay? And a lot of times it's not even talking about math. It's just like, hey, in your life you need to do a 180. That means you're going in a direction, you're making choices, you're going this way, you're choosing to go and make these choices, and a 180 means you turn around and you go in the opposite direction. Meaning you make these choices, you do these things, you do the exact opposite of the way you were going. So that's doing a 180 because it's a straight line. Instead of going this way, you turn around and go this way. You never hear people say, you need to do a 360 in your life. Well, that means you're making these choices and you're going this way, and you just do a full circle and you keep going back in the same direction you went. That's a 360 is a full circle. So I use that as an example because we've probably heard that before or seen that. 180 means you're going one way, but then you turn around and go the exact opposite way. Okay, so that's a straight ray, and I want to point that out because then what we do with that is we start taking that straight ray. So let's take this one, and instead of going like in that way and then exactly a 180 this way, we're going to take this ray and start going maybe up with it a little bit. Okay, now what we form there is called an angle. And an angle, I'm sure we've heard that term before, you need to turn at a 90-degree angle, or a door hinge. That's what I think of when I think of angle. It's open 30 degrees or 90 degrees or 110 degrees. That's this angle, okay? So we're going to look at an angle, and we're going to spend a little time with that later, but that's the next word I'm going to have you put there is an angle. An angle is two rays put together here, and they start at the same spot. Okay, so this ray starts here and goes that way. This ray starts here and goes that way, and it forms this angle. Okay, and that's that's what forms an angle. It's two rays put together, and the angles that we're going to be looking at, the first thing that we need to look at is how to name them. Okay, just like we named the point and the line segment, the ray. We need to know how to name this ray, or this angle, excuse me. So if I've got, let's put C here, let's put a point out here so I know what I'm talking about in J. Okay, so, oh, that's kind of hard to see. That's a J. So you got C, you got L, you got J. This point where both the rays start, okay, is called the vertex. Okay, that's going to be called the vertex. That's the point where both the rays start. It's kind of where your angle is at, right here. It's at the vertex. Okay, and these two rays are called sides. They're called sides of the ray, of the angle. Man, I keep saying rays. Okay, it's the sides. So CJ is a side, and see, that's a ray that goes that way. And CL is the other side, and it's a ray. And remember, the ray always points to the right on your name. So that's a side, CJ. CL is the other side. Okay, so this forms one side, this forms the other side. And the vertex where it started is point C. Just that's the vertex, is C. Okay? So that's some of the names of the parts of the angle. Now we need to look at how to name the angle as a whole. And at this time I'm going to put a little number in here. That number can be any number, 1, 8, 7, 4, 2, it can be any number. I'm going to explain why that is when we go to name this angle. We're going to name this angle. Now, I use this example. I like to quote movies, and I've not got to really do it yet on these videos because it's just, I like just being in a class and interacting with students. But I quote movies a lot. I love watching movies. One movie we quote, my family quotes a lot, is Sandlot. And if you've never seen it, it's a baseball movie, kids baseball movie. And there's a scene in there where there's a boy that doesn't know that much about baseball. But he's heard the name Babe Ruth. Okay, it's the greatest player of all time, and you know he hears about this player Babe Ruth, and so he wants to find out who Babe Ruth is, and so he's asking questions, but he doesn't realize that these kids, they call Babe Ruth by many names: the Great Bambino, the Sultan of Swat, the King of Crash. They have these nicknames for Babe Ruth, and he does not realize they're all the same person. Okay, he doesn't realize that they're referring to the same player. And so there's a scene where he loses a baseball signed by Babe Ruth, and they're trying to, tell him who that is, and they go, he's like, who is this Baby Ruth? He doesn't know who it is. And they said, the Great Bambino, the king, the King of Crash, the Sultan of Swat. And he's like, you mean that's the same guy? He doesn't realize that same player had all those names, and that they, all this player they've been talking about is the same player. Well, I use that as an example because we're going to name this angle. It's the same angles. There's only one angle here, but we're going to name it in 4 different ways in this case. Okay, we're going to name it all these different names. And the reason for that is there's times you need to use certain names to identify what you're talking about, because an angle could be a part of like a triangle. Okay, and so when it's part of a triangle, you need to be specific and be like, well, I'm referring to this angle right here, not this one over here. And so there's going to be ways to name that, and sometimes you can use one name, sometimes you can use a different name, whatever you need to use. So the first way to name this angle, and we're going to use all of these, we're going to use the little angle symbol here. So we're going to put the angle, and we're going to put, in this first name, you can name it if there's only one angle at the vertex. You can name it by its vertex. So I can call this angle C. Okay? That's one way to name it, is angle C. Now, if I was to put another angle there coming out of C, then I can't use that anymore. And we'll go into that more later, but I can't use angle C because now, once again, I don't know what angle I'm referring to. Is it this one? Like if I put another angle coming out of C, like this one, I don't know which one. Am I referring to this one or this one? Okay? But angle C is one way to name it if there's only one angle there. Angle 2, so I can call it, if it's got a number there and it's only one angle that I'm referring to, I can call it angle 2. So that's one way to name it. Let's see if I if I can show that. Another way I can name it is you can start at a point up here, or one of the end points of the ray, and go through the vertex and on to the next letter. You always got to keep the vertex in the middle though. So I can call this angle LCJ. So angle LCJ, and go in that order. And then turn around and go the other way though. But still the vertex is in the middle. So it's angle JCL. Angle JCL. What I can't do is just randomly say, oh, CLJ. Because CLJ would be going here and then turning and going this way, and you'd be referring to an angle up here. So those are the 4 ways you can name this angle. Angle C, angle 2, angle LCJ, and angle JCL. Okay, so that's the 4 ways you can name that angle. All right, I'm going to stop there with the new material, and I'm going to put some assignments or based on this. What I want you to do is I want you to name these the way I've taught you to name these things, and put it on your paper the way you're supposed to put it, with the letters the way they're supposed to go, with the little symbols above. So I want you to name this. Okay. 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 And then I want you to name these last two are going to be, so this will be number 1, this will be number 2, number 3, number 4. Then this one, I want you to name this angle in 4 different ways. So there's going to be four answers to this one. Okay, so that's a P, this is a R, this is a S, and this is a 7. Okay, so P, R, S here. These are the letters. This is 7. Now you can't name it PRS. Remember, I'm just saying those letters, but you're going to have to name them in the right order and name them the way they're supposed to be for this angle. And then do it again with this angle. Okay, this is going to be a Q right here, an L, and a T, and then a 1 in here. Okay, so name each one of these the way they're supposed to be named once, and then these, you're going to have 4 answers. Name this in 4 ways, name this one in 4 ways. Okay, and that will be your assignment. This will be the last video of this week. Remember, Fridays you don't have a daily assignment video because there's technically no classes those days, but always feel free to reach out, ask questions. Fridays, hopefully I'll be kind of get caught up on some things of grading and putting some stuff in and answering some questions. And all right, that'd be it.